Yeah, so that's actually two different stories. The one is people, there was a particular incident and people tweeted out to Malema and said, someone said to him, people are saying that you are behind farm murders. And then he responded and he said, maybe not. The other incident is something that was actually aired on Carte Blanche. When I said it, it was very controversial and people accused me of lying and making up stuff. And then I actually just pointed them to the recording that was aired on Carte Blanche. And then the whole thing sort of settled down, where a person from, I think it was the 28 gang, one of these prison gangs, a general or, a leader in one of these gangs, spoke with a journalist. I believe it was a journalist, not only a police official. And the recording, the discussion was recorded. And he said that Julius Malema came to see them in prison and said to them that if they want to go out and kill farmers, he can help them and he will be able to make sure that they get firearms to do so. And, it sounds very conspiratorial, but the actual audio recording of that was played. It was aired on Carte Blanche. People can find it online. And it was about a year or so before my book came out. And when I mentioned it, I was accused of, making up conspiracy theories and stuff like that. As I said, until I pointed the journalist in question to the actual Carte Blanche episode where the whole thing was aired. And then, they sort of back down. But what is so the story is alarming. And yes, it could be true that this guy is just trying to get attention and making up stuff and falsely trying to involve Malema. That could be the case. But what is alarming is that it hasn't been investigated. It wasn't a national spectacle. It was on Carte Blanche, yes. And basically nothing happened. So imagine if someone comes out and says, that if some white murderer comes out of prison and he says, oh, well, you know what, someone from AfriForum came to see me in prison and they told me I must go out and kill black people and they're going to give me firearms to do that. It would be an international spectacle if that happened. But when it's Malema or when it's the other way around, when the victims are farmers, then it's in the news and it's in the news for 2 days and everyone forgets about it. And it goes back to the whole thing about the double standards, where the race of the perpetrator is the main determining factor in terms of how people respond. And that's it's not an hypothesis. It's based on actual research, based on which you can say, well, it's very clear that the race of the victim or the race of the perpetrator is the criteria or variable, the most significant variable that according to which you can predict how this issue would be responded to by the media and by the public at large and by the government.
Why do you think they haven't investigated that? Because, I can believe a person like Ramaphosa, he would look for a silver bullet to get rid of Malema. Malema's probably his chief opponent at the moment in political elections. So why wouldn't they try to use that against him?
Well, I think there are probably many reasons, but two, which I would say are the most important. The one is that I think, in terms of your question, I think the ANC and Ramaphosa in particular is not trying to eliminate or pacify the EFF. They're trying to appease the EFF, and they're allowing the EFF to be the tail that wags the dog. They want Malema to go back to the ANC. They want the EFF to join the ANC, so they wouldn't try to destroy the EFF. That's the one reason. The other reason why I think there wasn't this massive backlash is just because it doesn't fit the narrative. The narrative is one that says or teaches us that South Africa was a lovely Garden of Eden type of place until 1652. Then the whites came, and then it was hell on earth until 1994. And then, we were all freed by the ANC, and now there are some minor glitches along the way, but basically we're all free and happy. That's the mainstream narrative. And to say, well, there's a very serious problem with farmers being murdered goes against the narrative. And I think that's why people those who are in positions of power to do something about this don't want to, because it doesn't suit their agenda, because their agenda is to keep the narrative intact.
That's fascinating. So you could sort of argue that the EFF is there just to pick up the votes the ANC is losing, and hopefully they can join again one day to pursue their agenda. But
yeah, well, no, I think that's the EFF's plan and the ANC's plan. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not just speculating. That's what they've said. I think Malema's plan is to build the EFF to be so strong that the ANC cannot ignore it, and to then come with a demand to say, okay, well, I think his move would be that he would say, we'll join the ANC, but you need to make me deputy president. I'm convinced. No one told me that, but that would have been my move if I was him. And the others, and Ramaphosa has said it himself also, and it was a few years ago, 2-3 years ago, also particularly alarming. Julius Malema made a speech, it was election year, and he said that we need to slit the throat of whiteness. And then 2 days later, Ramaphosa said, we can see that Julius Malema is still ANC deep down in his heart, and we invite him to come back to the party. After saying that, they want him to go back to the ANC, and he wants to go back. The question is just what would be the terms. It's a bargaining, it's a political power play that they're busy with.
Just to come back to your point of double standards, I believe you should know who advocate Mark Oppenheimer is. And he has told me, just imagine if a person has said, I want to slit the throat of whiteness, the backlash you would see then. I mean, it's clearly a double standard. Well, excuse me, blackness. Yeah, blackness. Yeah. You clearly see the double standard there. That would never be accepted. But to our viewers...
Sorry, just to give you another example is the Human Rights Commission. When Malema said, we're not calling for the slaughter of white people, at least for now, he was taken to the Human Rights Commission. The Human Rights Commission investigated and issued or published their finding. And they actually said in their finding that what Malema said is not hate speech because he's black. That's literally what the Human Rights Commission said. They said, because you have to consider context and all of that. And part of the context here is that he's black. And that means that a different standard has to apply. So it's not even sort of below the surface or tacit double standard. It's active and very public double standards. The Human Rights Commission have said we need to implement double standards when we look at things like hate speech. It's very, very alarming. And we've said to the Human Rights Commission and to the media that as long as the Human Rights Commission's position is that the race of a person determines whether what he said is hate speech or not, as long as the Human Rights Commission says that, that just means that you cannot take the Human Rights Commission seriously, and the Human Rights Commission is part of the problem. It's not part of the solution.